Can you imagine a national park with crystal clear water, white sand beaches, a tropical climate, an abundance of wildlife, and the site of a historic fort? If you can't, let me introduce you to Dry Tortugas National Park. Dry Tortugas National Park is a collection of 7 islands off the coast of Florida. The 7 islands include Loggerhead, Garden, Bush, Long, East, Hospital, and Middle. They are between the Gulf of Mexico, the Western Caribbean Islands, and the Atlantic Ocean. Dry Tortugas is also home to Fort Jefferson, which is found on Garden Key. The area was designated as a park to preserve the island and marine ecosystems that surround the area. It was also designated as a park to preserve Fort Jefferson, surrounding shipwrecks, and to allow for public access. Dry Tortugas National Park is significant because of its marine habitat for many endangered animals, including coral and birds. The 2 species of threatened coral are elkhorn and staghorn. Dry Tortugas National Park is also home to 5 species of sea turtles, like the hawksbill sea turtle, which are endangered or listed threatened under the Endangered Species Act of 1973. Although the park is not found on a convergent, divergent, or transform boundary, the formation of the islands is still very interesting. About 500 million years ago, an ancient reef was located off the coast of southern Florida. Sand shoals formed over the reef and allowed corals to grow. As they die, the skeletons harden and accumulate and form piles large enough to become islands. The spaces between the shoals were filled with different calcium carbonate organisms and plants. The entire mass then solidified together using calcium carbonate precipitates. The process happened over and over again until a pile was high enough to rise above sea level and become an island. The formation of the ice caps removed fresh water from the oceans and caused the seawater level to slowly sink. As a result, living reefs began to die and were completely exposed, creating the Florida Keys we see today. The area was originally discovered by Ponce de Leon in 1513 and named Tortugas, or turtle, when he caught over 100 sea turtles in the area. There is not a whole lot of history in the area except for history related to Fort Jefferson. In the years after the area was discovered, it was used as a base for pirates to attack merchant ships. After the War of 1812, forts were built from Maine to Texas to defend the United States. Fort Jefferson was built to protect the southern coastline as well as the Mississippi River. It was in a strategic spot and as a result was able to act like an advanced post for ship controlling. The fort was used heavily during the Civil War. The Union took control and created a blockade in the fort to prevent supplies from reaching the South. The fort also served as a prison not only for rebels but for Union deserters as well. After the Civil War ended, the usefulness of the fort declined and the added cost of hurricanes, corrosion, and climate began to build up. In 1888, the Army gave the fort to the Marine Hospital Service as a quarantine station. In 1935, FDR designated the area as Fort Jefferson National Monument. It was upgraded to a national park in 1922. Preservation efforts are ongoing at the fort because of the area surrounded by saltwater, heat, and humidity. The biggest project at the fort is the preservation and removal of iron gates that kept the cannons hidden. These gates flung open when cannons were fired. The erosion of the iron gates have caused the surrounding bricks to crack, break off the walls, and fall into the water. The removal of these gates will help the brick walls to stay intact and keep the fort standing for future generations. The crystal clear water, marine wildlife, and historic fort are not only the iconic and tangible features of the park, but are symbols for the area's history and value to the National Park Service.